I want to share with you a story as we're back in Hadassah and Kerem. Baruch Hashem, my wife's operation was successful, but after 10 days they removed the staple from her, and it seemed like everything was fine until all the stitches opened up and she had to be sent back in the ambulance to the hospital. And it was quite an ordeal as we were sent to the emergency room, and we had to wait there 7 hours. We really should have been taken up immediately to the women's section, that's on the 7th floor. But in the women's section, they're waiting for the instructions from the emergency room. And the emergency room, they were waiting for the instructions from the women's section. And nobody really knew who has to call first. And I was begging them to call. I went up to the women's section. I begged them to call down. I went down to the emergency room. I begged them to call up. But the right person has to call. There was a lot of different things. I tried a lot of ishtadlus to make things moving, especially since my wife was bleeding profusely, and it was quite a ordeal. So finally, I told my wife, I really think we did enough ishtadlus. I think we reached the point that enough ishtadlus was done. And when you get to that point, then you shouldn't do more ishtadlus. Why? Because that's the one thing we have to do. Ishtadlus does nothing. Absolutely nothing. Right? Hashem makes things happen. The only reason we do ishtadlus is so, as we said before, like you're not allowed to daven for things. You have to do ishtadlus in order that it should look like we're making things happen. Sheishes yomim tasim malacha. B'shvi Shabbos Hashem malacha. 6 days a week we do malacha. We make it look like we're building the world, we're writing, we're building, we're designing, whatever we might be doing. But in truth, Hashem does everything. So sometimes you get to that point where you did a lot of ishtadlus. It was already 7 hours. I was telling my wife, there's nobody to talk to. They say they have to call up, they say you have to go down. No matter what I say, just not going. And you get to that point, it's a point of clarity. It's a point of clarity that really nothing that I'm doing is having any real effect. That's a great chesed from Hashem. It's a great chesed from Hashem when you reach that point, because what? Because that's the clarity. That's the clarity of Atik. That what I'm doing is nothing. It's all totally Hashem. Ain't over. Yeah? And when you do 7 hours of ishtadlus, and you try this, and you try this, and you try this, and nobody's listening, as my friend Dr. Jonathan Ringo told me today. He was in the emergency room a few months ago. He was in an accident. He told me, for the first few minutes, when you might be dying, then they take you very seriously. Once they realize you're not dying, so they move on to the next patient. It's not their fault. It's very busy. Yeah. But after 7 hours of ishtadlus, it came to me crystal clear. The ishtadlus is doing nothing. At that point, the avoda is to turn to be taught. And say, hey, really what's going to procure my Yeshua is not my ishtadlus. It's a Amun Hashem. V'yaminu b'Hashem. Yeah? You get to that point. And this is really what the Yom Tov Sukkah is. We took the point of sitting in a sukkah. I remember one time when I was in America, there were sukkahs, because someone in my family needed to have an operation. So I got a ride. Somebody stopped and I had to get to the hospital. And I was really, really late. And the guy stopped over the ride, which is crazy. But anyway, he said he was a taxi, so he didn't know badge or anything. I went in and I paid it. And then I started talking to him. Anyway, he gave me his phone number. The next night he calls me up and he said, I agree with my father that my purpose in life is to take you wherever you need to go. I said, great. The next day he came and picked me up. He took me around Manhattan. He took me to Brooklyn. And we got to Brooklyn and said, what are all these huts all about? These wooden huts. And I told him, for 7 days, 8 days, we sit in those huts. Remember that God protected us in the desert. I said, wow, that's incredible. So we got really blown away. But what's the idea? The idea is that we can have the most fancy house in the world, right? I don't know, 25 rooms, made of the most expensive materials, waterproof, right? Windproof, earthquake proof, I don't know what. Yeah. But what's protecting us? It's not the house. It's the Bori Olam. And that's the shot. We just have schach on top. We have flimsy walls. Yeah. And only a Kodesh Baruch Hu protecting us. And that is the message. The message of Sukkot is that only Hashem. Yeah? And that's really clear when you're in the emergency room. Nobody wants to talk to you, as our Shiva once said. I was giving a shiur in Manhattan to some in the office. It was one of my first trips to America. And 30 people, the whole time, they just ignored me. And I met my Rosh Shiva that day, Rosh Shiva, and I told him, when the Rosh Shiva taught us the Maharal says, get ahead of the feeling you know. He says, that's how I feel. He said, that's the shot! That's the shots! Anyway, that's how I felt. They're on here. We don't exist. But they're busy. It's not their fault. But really what's going on is Hashem is guiding me to understand that only He, Yeshua only comes through Him. All this is is just to protect God's Baruch Hu's secrecy in the world. Oilam from Lashon Elam. Hashem wants to be hidden in the world. Give us riches. So remember this as we get into your sukkah, that our houses are also sukkahs, and that's how I understand Shmini Atzeret. Shmini Atzeret. The last day of sukkahs, we go in our house, and the house is also a sukkah. This is the deeper message of Shmini Atzeret. Kodesh Baruch Hu should help us to come to this clear recognition that everything is only from Him, and all protection comes from Him, all Yeshua comes from Him. Amen.